the part that it's not really easy to get on board, and 11 o'clock is such an early time for everyone. So appreciate you joining this. So I would like to start with a small energizer, I would say. So I guess everybody is there, and just to make you aware about the options available in the webinar, we would wait a couple of minutes, like 2-3 minutes before we kick off the presentation. So just to make you aware, so there is a chat option where you can join in and chat anytime. You can ping your questions or you can raise a hand. If you write on the left hand side of your chat option, there is a raise hand option. You can raise it, and my colleagues Purushottam or me myself, we would pick up, we would unmute you or get to you for the question. Let's make it an interactive one. I am hoping that you guys are pretty much excited as well. So let's make it an interactive one. And in case there are any questions that we would not be able to get on during the presentation, we may try to resolve them at the end of it. But we would also keep a window open wherein you can submit your questions later after the presentation by email or anything. Just to introduce myself, I am currently, so I did my PGDM finance from IMT-CDL in 2012-14. I was in that batch, was lucky enough to get some great students along with me. And it's been a great experience since then. And on the career side as well, it's been pretty kind of a spike since then. So I was fortunate enough to work with EY then and now moved to PwC. So I worked on deals for about 7 years now, different kind of deals. I would say buy side, sell side, and a lot of international ones as well. Also, I happen to work with a few private equity players out of London, which are really tough to handle, I would say, a little tougher than the Indian clients as well. So let's see how it goes today. Thank you everyone again, and let's make it a productive session. And one request, let's not make it one way, rather I would really recommend that let's make an interactive session. In case of questions or anything, you can ping anytime, you can raise your hand, and we shall be keep a lot of space in the end of the presentation to discuss a few things and the upskilling methods, etc. Thank you, and let's kick it off. So, as you all know, the session for today is the role of M&A in the global economy. So a small thing, I guess most of the people who have joined this presentation, in fact, all of you would know at least that what M&A is, but there is no harm in telling what M&A is. M&A stands for mergers and acquisitions. So you would see a couple of short forms in the presentation, and we would try to explain them here, or we would provide you also a glossary in the end. So what should you expect from this presentation? This is something that everybody is looking forward to. Would we really discuss the whole role, or what would be it about? See, there is one thing very clear, that today we have 1 hour, and so we would try to pick what is most important as far as introduction part is, and then we would see how it goes further, and basis on the interest we can plan even the follow-up sessions. But today we would touch upon a few topics to start with. So the agenda is, first topic, what is in this presentation? What would it talk about? Then I have included, or we have included a few definitions and scope. And then why M&A, like why M&A is important, why mergers and acquisitions have become such a critical part of the global economy. We would also touch upon a few requests. Can we please mute everyone? Maybe in case somebody has a question, then we can unmute them and they can join in. But for now, it would be great if we can just mute everyone. Yeah, thanks. So we would also touch upon the key KPIs. KPI is key performance indicator. So in finance, and especially in the M&A deals, what are the most important things that a company would look at before buying a firm? We would also compare what is the main difference, how would we look at a deal from a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective. Because if I am going, just think of a market, right? If you are going to buy something, how would you react differently than when you are a seller? So for example, if you have a shop in the market, how would you react differently than if you are a customer in the market? The jargons are different, right? And you would already guess how is it different in your mindset already. And then, as we all know, right now we are facing some strange times due to COVID. So we have included a few slides on discussing the economic impact of crisis and their outlook. And also, we have tried to, suggest you a few things so that you can pursue to not only challenge the status quo going forward, but also to prepare for yourself in the coming months and years. So there are a lot of things available in the market, I would say, to upskill yourself so that you would be, pretty much up there when there is a call for the talent. So that is something that we can definitely cover. So first and foremost, so what is in this presentation? So we have divided it into three main pillars. On the left, you say it would have a lot of information. So for the first timers, it would be a little hard to digest. But believe you me, just I would request everyone, most of you should take a pen and a pencil, and we would manage the speed accordingly. And a pen and a notebook would be great to have. And in case you see anything great, you can just note it down, and that would definitely help you going forward. And as mentioned, you can even send later emails to the IMD website thing, and you can join in for the questions anytime. That is always welcome after the session as well. Then there would be a small update on the recent events that have happened, and the third point, which is also sorry, I got mute by someone. So yeah, I hope you did not miss. But the third part is compilation of sources. So there we would, it's just about what our sources we are using, because the information that we take come from different places. So it's very important that we reference them and we acknowledge them. So these are the three main topics that you would see in different formats and stuff in the presentation. In case of any questions, you can write in chat anytime. So whenever you feel like, okay, the speed is a little going forward, a little faster or slower, any point that you want me to reiterate or, revisit, you can always jump in and say, hey, wait, and then we can, talk about it in detail. So definitions and scope. It is a topic that is, of interest for a lot of people. So few definitions that you would need to know, or I guess you should be interested to know. So merger acquisition, we would discuss them in detail, what is the main difference and stuff. But there are also a lot of stuff that we can discuss and it would be very helpful. For example, capital market. So by capital market, the market in which the capital, if I just go by the dictionary definition, so it is a market wherein we play with the capital. And what is the capital? The capital is basically the share capital, all the Dow Jones or share market. So wherever we exchange shares or stocks of a company, those are all capital markets available in the world. So a small point, but pretty. This is something which is very sensitive when it comes to anything on a big decision by a prime minister or movement in any company. For example, a key decision taken. So this is something very volatile to every economic activity, I would say. So this is something which all the countries are dependent on. Then GDP, gross domestic product, what a country earns in total. Then deals market. So deals market is basically the focus today. The M&A market, the consolidation of companies or assets through various types of financial transactions. So all the M&A activities, for example, buying and selling of firms, if we consolidate them together, the value that they create in the market, that is the deals market for us. Then recession. So by recession, we all know what it means. It means a slight decline or a significant decline in the economic activities in a region or a country. And region could be a small country or a specific, so for example, South Asia region or something like that, or the whole world. For example, the major impact like the global recession or the high economic crisis, or for example, the COVID-19 right now. These are all recessions which the world would remember for a longer period of time. Then there is a very strange thing in the end, dry powder. So powder, as we all know, like we all have it in home, right? And why is it called dry? So these are basically the cash reserves an individual company maintains so that they can meet its obligations. Obligations are duties during the times of economic stress. So it is a kind of a provision, right? So a provision that the companies, the big companies at least make, so that they have some extra cash. So in case of stress or any economic problem, they should have some extra money, and also pretty liquid because it is all cash. So these refer to those cash reserves. Going forward, so now the tombstone of our presentation, mergers. So the basic difference between mergers and acquisitions. So what happens? Why do they happen? And what happens in a merger and acquisition? So the core point that you all should know is both merger and acquisition relate to a new identity. So for example, there are two companies, three companies, four companies, or one single company which is merged or acquired. There would definitely be a new identity. That is the core part, right? Second is, which is very important, it helps to grow. So these two are the main tombstones, and then there is a slight difference in the way they happen. And then if you look at the financial or commercial or operational, then it's the C. So believe you me, the kind of activities that we pursue, so to say, in relation to mergers and acquisition, short or long term, these are all, I would say, there is an ocean out there and the opportunities out there are huge. So merger relates. So merger is basically, so for example, I have put a simple equation here. Company A plus company B, if both of these companies merge, guys, I just got a message that the presentation is not visible. Is it not visible? Is it so for everyone? Can you raise your hands or maybe give some okay, let me try to put it on some oh, okay, it's visible. So okay, then maybe some of you have a connection problem, that's why it's not visible. Okay, so okay, so let's continue with the I thought there is some problem other than that as well. So if it's visible, then it's good. Or maybe I just show you one more option and just let me know if then it's a okay, maybe it's a poor connection from the participants, and okay, then we would continue. So merger, as the name suggests, merge is basically combining two things, or even multiple things, I would say. So if company A merges with company B, the new company would be company C. So that is a very basic definition or a basic equation that I can suggest you for merger. So what happens to the other things? For example, there is a financial impact, there is an operational impact. So let's take an example. Maruti now wants to merge with Hyundai. It's a unrealistic example, but I'm just taking it so that I can explain to you a few things. So, or Maruti Suzuki. Let's take Maruti Suzuki as an example. So Maruti was different, Suzuki was different. They planned, okay, we would come together and make Maruti Suzuki. What happened there actually? In the beginning, the first question is the stock of both the companies would be merged. And this is something for that a layman would understand that, okay, these two companies would come together and there would be a new company. But if you look at the background, there are a lot of other things that you should also think as financial professionals. For example, both these companies would have an IT function. Both the IT function would function completely differently. So what would happen to the IT function when both these come together? Second point, both these companies would have different functions like finance, HR, all the administrative help. These functions function completely different. So what would happen? It's not like having a new building, getting everybody in, and then things would just start off from the first day. So I don't think it would make sense if we just think from the outside perspective. That's why we as a financial professional should think a step ahead and then. Guys, can you mute AY? Okay, perfect. So I guess I got mute too. Okay, let's go ahead. So we have, as a financial professional, you must think about all those perspectives and what happens in the background, because that's where as a professional we can help and sorry about that, but I guess the voice was fine. Now it should be fine because I guess they muted everyone, so there was some problem in the noise. So yeah. So how would it be different than an acquisition? So for example, in merger and acquisition, what they normally do is they happen to have consulted with an external vendor or an external consultant. For example, let's take an example of PwC, EY, or all these big fours, or any Goldman Sachs, or any of these investment bankers. They come up, they help the companies to merge, and they also help the company to establish until day 100. Day 100 is basically the day when we think, okay, the company C should be operational and should run it on its own. So this is something that we all should, think of as financial professionals. That by the definition, okay, it means company A and B would come together and make company C. But what all happens in the background, and that's where we as financial professionals can, come in, help the companies, and that's also how we should learn things so that we can be a better financial professional later in our lives. So acquisition, the only difference in merger and acquisition is, in acquisition there is a main donor, which is, for example, if company A and company B would now merge, there would be a new parent, which would be either of company A or B. So in acquisition, the company A would be, the new name would be one of those companies. For example, in my equation, company A and B makes company A. So the new equation which comes here is company A. So now what it means now is the ownership remains with company A, the stocks converted to company A, the new IT systems or all the supporting function would also be owned by company A, but it does not necessarily mean that B would acquire everything of A and then change it to a certain. Now for that, take an example of an IT firm and a finance firm. So I would give you a real life example. So PwC happened to acquire IXDS, which I guess most of you can search in the internet later. The name is IXDS. So if you search on internet, you would know about it. It's a technology firm. We acquired it last year. We did the transaction in about November and December, and the news got out in February this year. So it should be like this, because IXDS is a very small firm, and then PwC is an international firm. So it should, we would as an external would think, okay, the IXDS would come and just adopt everything from PwC. No, it did not happen. IXDS had some great talent at their heart. So we just, so can we mute a while, or can we mute people there, or can people go on mute? It actually disturbs a little. And the people raising hands, we would come to those, and I'll just ask, my colleague to unmute those. So there is a question, what happens to the liability of both the companies? So these are the things that, that composite deal rationale. So what does deal rationale means? So for example, there is a concept called debt and debt-like items, which I would show you in a couple of minutes. So the debt and debt-like items should actually be excluded from the deal's price, and then is there any disturbance in the noise? I think now we have muted everyone, but we are still getting messages that can be mute the other people. I guess there is no disturbance. At least from my side, there is no disturbance now. So all the liabilities have to be settled of the target first. So as I mentioned, so I guess it answers your question. So all the transactions that happen, most of the times, 95% of the times, this is cash and debt free. So we do not take cash or debt in knowledge of the target. Target is basically the company that we are acquiring or we are merging, the other company, right? So we just take it out, and we will discuss that in detail in a couple of minutes. Not in detail as per se as we do in the cycle or the deal cycle, but yeah, we'll touch on it. So what is the result of a merger or acquisition? Why is it happening on a global level so much? And that's why the question arises, why M&A is so important these days. So how a company can grow? So simple question, how a company can grow and I would like somebody to speak. If you can raise your hand, then Purushottam sir would, just unmute you and then you can speak. If you have any suggestions there to talk about why and how does do a company good, can grow, or you can just ping in the chat. I would like to know what do you think? How does a company grow? Any company, or you can also think of a small example of a small shop near your place. So, Purushottam ji, can you unmute Rahul Sumit Chaudhary? Sumit, can you speak?
A company can grow by simply the merger with the other company, as well as by the acquisition process, through which a company can have a right of another company, and they both can globally lead the market.
Okay. So, Sumit, thanks for your answer. But in a normal scenario, think of a shop near your place or anything small in your place. Any small company that you know. How does a company grow normally? Any other one? Any other person who would like to join in and answer that?
Through the market reputation of its resources.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just got a very good answer. So can we unmute Surajit Kundu? Yeah, or Ayush Agarwal. I would like to know their views. Have a small chit chat with them. Can we unmute Ayush Agarwal? Ayush, you can unmute yourself and then speak.
Yeah, by expansion, one is expansion and distribution, or expansion in new market territories and improving of sales. These are some of the
Perfect.
ways other than M&A.
Perfect.
The
That is
growth.
great. Thank you for your
Normally,
answer.
hello, I am audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah,
Please
sir,
go
I am
ahead.
Qadir Ali Khan. Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead. We are actually short in time,
Yeah,
so please go ahead, Alesh.
Normally, any company growing just expansion of the market, just expansion of the channel sales, channel partner. Normally.
Perfect. Yeah, that is good. That is good. That is absolutely clear.
Yeah. On the other side, making the distribution channel widely on the respected areas. Normally, the company going.
So thank you everyone for all your answers. I would request you all to mute yourself, and I'll now collect all your answers and combine them all together. I have also read all the answers in the chat. Great. So this is how we should connect and collaborate on the webinars, and you have answered all great. So some of you have mentioned new business techniques. Be very true. Innovation, true. Gaining market share, true. Increasing sales, true. So what does it mean? Most of you have thought about things which are organic in nature. What do we mean organic in nature? Now think of a guy who goes to gym, right? And he works out. A lot of would you relate to that? If you just go by the organic nature, you might take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years to have that build that you are really thinking of, and then you also have to follow a strict diet for that. That is how you would grow organically. It's smooth, it's slow, and it would take a lot of time as well. But then there are other things in the market that you can just take. Might be healthy or unhealthy, because steroids are not all bad, and there could be some other things that you can maybe change in your diet so that you have better results. There are a lot of inorganic things that you can so organic is anything that is natural. You increase sales, you increase market share, you market yourself well, you have a market reputation. For example, Colgate is a brand, but in India, Colgate would mean toothpaste to all of us, right? It's the market brand reputation. So, but initially it was the only way to grow. But then this M&A thing came, and the whole scenario changed. Right now, a lot of companies, in fact, the majority of companies have at least one or two, deals in their lives. Even a small company which is listed on I would say on stock market, or even a small company with 50, 60, 70 people, if not officially, but they would see at least some kind of a merger or acquisition happening, maybe collaboration with a partner to grow themselves. So these are all inorganic methods, but then somebody just paying blue ocean strategy, that is great. So I would just like to, catch up on that shortly, and it would be great to hear what blue ocean strategy means. Vijay, can you unmute yourself and then speak? If not, then I can give an example there.
Yeah,
So,
am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
So blue ocean strategy is basically a pursuit of differentiation and low cost to open up a new market space and to create new demand in the space where there is no competition.
Yeah, so I would just go with the last part. So to create demand where there is no competition. So what does blue ocean means? If you think from a layman's perspective, thank you for your answer, Vijay, and thank you everyone who is participating in this conversation, really making it very interactive. So blue ocean simply means the unexcavated markets, the unexcavated products, the unexcavated services. I don't know how many of you, are Apple fans, but Steve Jobs once in his, in his presentation, he said, "Don't sell what the customer, is demanding. Come up with things which the customer needs, but he does not know, because customer sometimes does not even know his demands." For example, all the products of Apple, if you think about the Apple Watch, if you think about the Apple iPhone, if you think about the AirPod or the MacBook, they were never in the market, and there was a lot of products were never even had a competition, like the touch screen. It never had a competition, but somehow they became the trendsetters and they created the demand. So this is something very important. The innovation is important, but M&A has been great, and it is trillions of dollars of business in every 2 years or so. So this is something that we all can work in, and there is huge potential. And we would discuss few of the larger deals as well. So there is one thing that the companies which think of coming into this deal cycle or in deals market, if they come together, they have an increased market share. They kill the competition. For example, if two competitors come up together, for example, Vodafone, think of Idea Vodafone merger. I guess it is Idea Vodafone. So if they both came together, they killed the competition, and then they had increased market share. They shared their technology at heart, which is great. So they can, learn from each other's technology as well. And there are other synergies as well. Synergies are basically the benefits that come from, the upside potential that a deal may have. So I would share a very strange but true scenario from one of my recent deals. So as consultants or as the deal consultants, when we work for different firms, even if you work for an investment bank or if you work, so somebody just asked, can you give one line definition of blue ocean strategy? When you think of ocean, it is a lot of, so to say, unending opportunities, right? So blue ocean means and if you think of swimming across ocean, it's not possible. So the opportunities which are not yet excavated relate to, blue ocean. I hope it makes sense. Unexplored market, yeah. That is some quick pointer there. So the examples that I just quoted, the Voda idea, maybe still in process or something, but yeah, it was just an example that it's not just mean to share a name again, a new name. It also means sharing benefits, like tax benefits or economies of scale and other synergies. And there are also upside potential and downside potential in every phase. So we were analyzing a company, a target for our client who wants to buy. It was a PE firm based out of London, and they wanted to buy a small firm based out of South Germany. So what happened was we analyzed their numbers in the first 2 weeks, and then we came up with a few observations. So this private equity happened to score or maybe I would say stream this company for about 2 years now. And then when we came up with our numbers and when we came up with our initial suggestions, so there are a lot of things that we noticed. So this company had a plant which was based in some part of Poland, and it was some, I would say, environmental problems, which they never knew for the last 2 years. But somehow we could figure that there was a huge potential there as a negative or a downside potential. And then we also thought of analyzing their working capital for last 12 months. We came up with a few deficiencies in the working capital. So they actually needed about 4.6 million or about 5 million extra. So when we shared this couple of negative things about the target, the PE client laughed and asked us, should I really go about this deal or not? But as a consultant, you should never say a clear yes or a no. But we also just laughed and said, okay, we are analyzing and it's up to you. You have to make the final decision. But yeah, these are the things that we find. And then he asked, are there any upside potentials? And then we presented few synergies that they may have because this company was great in this technology, this kind of a manufacturing technology. So all those things really help. So yeah, so if you think of mergers and acquisition, they really are the real today of growing. And after every economy, so for example, each year you would see the number of deal market, it would just, get on increasing every time. And that's why it's happening. And that's why millions and millions of people are working in deals market. And there are a lot of fields because I know a few of my colleagues have also joined this presentation from India, so they would know what are the different, and we would touch upon those functions as well. So what I've taken here is I have taken example of the top 10 tech M&A since 2009. The biggest tech M&A is Apple and Beat until today. So just anybody knows about this? Want to share something? What could be the value of this transaction and when it happened? Any clue about that? So this transaction happened was finalized in 2014, and it was about 3 billion. So huge, and something that we could just think of how large the impact on the market was. Then there are a few more acquisitions, and we all know about Facebook and WhatsApp, right? We all remember this acquisition happening in front of us. They paid WhatsApp about 16 billion. So that's what it made out of it. So a lot of other transactions as well. If you see the third transaction here, the DiDi and the Kaudi, this is one of the biggest merger happening in China. And again, it's a car hailing player in China's market. They both came together to form a 15 billion ride hailing plant giant. So it's a couple of great innovations there together. Now think of any of these companies, two different companies coming together. Think of the upside potential of the synergies that they may have. Huge. It's like you cannot imagine what next they could go. They have different experts. The kind of talent that sits in the heart of both is great. And the participation ratio by the customers, the brand value, these were great. And when these kind of companies come together, they just do wonders. And the technology sharing, the platform sharing, it just enables better future for both these companies. All of us know about the Silicon Valley of India, right? Can you name the Silicon Valley of India? Correct. So Daksh Manglik just named, and Jatin also named Bangalore. So if you just go on internet, maybe later, the people who don't know it, so a lot of acquisitions happen there every year. So one of the reasons that India has, the best of engineers, and or most of them work from Bangalore or the South City. Of course, in Delhi also, it's not, I am dementing any of the places, but in India, Bangalore is serving as the Silicon Valley of this southern Asian region, for at least for India. So pretty helpful there, and people go ahead and then do great innovations. They come up with small firms, and a lot of young billionaires are there. So now we would discuss a few KPIs, the key performance indicators that every firm would look at before buying a firm. The first one is trade working capital. So what do we understand by trade working capital? Yeah, Amit, Gurugram as well. Yeah, agreed. So what is trade working capital? What do we understand by working capital? The dictionary definition of working capital. Anyone? Daksh, would you like to speak? You can unmute and speak, and we'll have a small tete-a-tete right away.
Receivables, payables.
Hi. So
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Who's it?
hi.
Yeah,
So
working capital means. Hello. Sir, this
Yeah,
is Subhi
Subramaniam,
Chaudhary.
please go ahead.
The working capital means the capital needed to run the operation of the company. We can say, yeah.
Yeah, that is the easiest definition. So
Yeah.
the amount of, so for example, right now, there's somebody has mentioned the cash flow required to day. So the liquidity that you must have in the business to run day-to-day activities. That is the easiest definition. So well done there.
Exactly.
Yeah, so pretty good. So a small
Thank you.
question, so why is it important for a firm which goes to buy a target? Why is it important to know that what is there and what do they see normally? What do you think? So for example, so this is a question for all of us. So
So
I have a
leveraging
very,
ratio to
let me complete the question first. And then people can raise hands or they can just unmute yourself and then, just come up with their answers. So today is 30th of May 2020. I guess I am right with the date. Let's say a company wanted to acquire company A wanted to acquire company B on April 31st, right? Or 30th, or I would say end of April. And they see, okay, the working capital right now is about 5 million, right? As on date, as on the period ending on April. What else a company would look at? That is my question. And why are they looking at trade working capital? What do you think?
Well, sir, the company will look for the minimum liabilities as well as the condition of the cash flow in the present scenario and the working capital of the company to be getting acquired or to be getting merged with.
Fairly, but how is it important in a deal? Can anybody else come up and answer? Very
Yeah,
good.
they can
Cash
look at
operation.
the debt and equity ratio.
Very good.
Maybe they will
That's
look at
quite a
the
fair answer, Kavita.
maybe they look at
Guys,
the company's inventory.
yes, Tarun, but can you elaborate on that?
So they look at the inventory of the company, like how much does the inventory company has,
Fair
and
enough.
and then
So,
trade receivables, payables as well.
Hello.
okay. So,
Hello.
yes. Who's that?
Working capital is
Mhm.
business activities, day-to-day trading transactions. It's
Fair enough.
actually
So,
working capital is the liability, the assets and and minus of the liability. It's calculated. The company is
yeah,
called
that is the books.
working capital.
That's the correct. That is correct, and that is how we all studied in the books that current assets minus current liabilities are basically working capital. Now, I guess we can
Yeah,
mute, and then I can just
yeah,
explain how this.
I just want to say, like, the company A will look at the net worth of company B to
Mhm.
acquire the company B. The
Correct.
fixed
And
assets
how
they
how
have
how do we reach? How do we reach there? This is
by
something very interesting. So
yeah.
okay, I would just suggest you all go mute, and then this is something just mean thank you for your answer, and thanks everybody who just answered, and thank you everyone who is writing their answer on the right. I really love it. So let me tell you. So you all see a monthly trade working capital small chart below, right? Can you please mute you all, because so that otherwise it's a little challenging for me to speak. So the chart is pretty small, but you can at least see two lines going, one above the other, right? So the thing is, when a company buy a company, right, they look at the target working capital. I'll explain to you in detail. What they do is they calculate the 12-month average working capital, that what is the average working capital that this company has from last 12 months, and then they come up with a number. First of all, the standard definition that is followed in deals for trade working capital, I'm not talking about net working capital, I'm talking about trade working capital, is account receivables, account payables, and inventories together. So these are the three key items that we take in trade working capital, right? Other thing which we look at is very important is seasonality. So the two lines that you see in my presentation, if you see, they just go down at the end near December. So it's basically from Jan to December, and they also go down, and these two go on similar pattern, right? It's very small. Maybe I can try and make it big manually. Wait, I know it's small. So yeah, can you see the chart now? I guess yes. So yeah, so now I guess most of you can see the chart, right? Good. So if you see these two lines, these are basically, one is monthly turnover, one is working capital. So when we do a chart like this, we know, okay, the working capital is moving. It has got, for example, in the month of September, this goes down, and this goes down by about, if you see 40 and then 25, it goes down by, if we consider the numbers in millions, it would goes down by about 15 million or so. So the company which is buying a company would compare the year ending, not year ending, rather I would say period ending. For in any month which when it is buying the firm, it would see the working capital there and would compare it with the average working capital. I'm taking a very simple example. Let's say the average working capital is 10, okay, and the period ending when the company is buying another firm, the working capital is 8. It means the working capital would need 2 more millions to pay, as somebody just mentioned, the liabilities, to pay it. In case the working capital is 12, then it would be 2 million extra. So when doing the deal, when exchanging the money, the buyer would get either 2 million extra if it's over the 10 million benchmark, or he would get 2 million less if it's below the 2 million mark. So that's how the companies look at working capital and different aspects of seasonality. In case there are a lot of seasonality patterns every year, and which is purely because of season. So one example for the season would be, in most of the manufacturing firms in India, now I'm taking an example of India, we all celebrate Diwali, which happens to come in October or November. A firm like, a manufacturing firm which makes maybe clothes, think of its working capital now. Now imagine the working capital it would have before October, in September or August. It would really have a high working capital, because it would, as Tarun mentioned, the inventory part, it would stock up inventories for the high demand coming up. It means every year trade working capital would go up in that month, because they foresee the demand coming up. So that these are purely seasonality patterns. So they all see all that. And also whenever there is a downward, for example, there are times when in some countries, Christmas is a big celebration, right? So for example, in Audi, Mercedes, every automotive cycle in every automotive company in Germany, it would have a downward trend in December. Reason is simple, because the people are on holiday. If there is nobody to produce the automobile, there would be no automobile, right? So the trade working capital just goes down. So all these things, the seasonality patterns and everything, they have to be considered before buying a firm. And also, when you work as a financial consultant or a finance professional in a firm, when you see these things very normally in a day-to-day scenario, you would know that, okay, this is something that would happen. So you come up with a hypothesis, and then we confirm with the client whether it's true. For example, if there is a firm and we think, okay, December trade working capital is low, maybe it's because of the Christmas holiday. But we don't really go ahead and confirm it ourselves. We just go ahead to the client and then confirm it with the client. Taking a note from client is pretty important. The other two key important points are EBITDA and net debt. EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Companies do not really look at, they do look at the net income or net profit, but the deal market would mostly happen based on EBITDA multiple, right? Or they do sometimes, 5% of deals happen on discounted cash flow as well, but I am not touching that because we just have 1 hour. So most of the deals that you see in the market would happen as a multiple of EBITDA. But you have to think of all the innovation firms, because innovation firms in the beginning, they all have losses, but they have great innovation at their heart. and then the biggies like Facebook or giants like Reliance, they just buy them, and then there is no such consideration. They look at their future cash flows, and they look at their future plans and things. But here, otherwise, most of the firms normally they look at EBITDA multiple. So it's very important to know the EBITDA and to know also, how they normalize their EBITDA. When I say normalize, it means adjusting. So there are a lot of activities which happen in an year. For example, a CEO just resigned uh, in September, and the last 3 months for every firm are very critical. Any firm would do, a lot of business to cover their targets and stuff. But a CEO or a CFO just misses the golden opportunity, or I would say just let the firm miss the golden opportunity of last 3 months, then the firm would suffer huge losses and stuff. So those are one-off effects that we must normalize. Or for example, the provisions roll out, and for example, a restructuring expense happening. Restructuring, I would not go in detail, but restructuring expense is a salient feature of a non-operating. Anything which is not operating in nature, we have to adjust all of that from EBITDA before coming up with the normalized EBITDA number where the company can pay as a multiple of. So EBITDA is a very good measure of profit, and it's apple to apple comparison. So for example, if you just deduct all these non-cash items like depreciation, amortization, take out interest and tax, it's really a good thing to look at, and then helps us to get to a number which makes more sense. Then net debt. As some of you asked earlier about liabilities. So as we mentioned that most of the transactions are cashless and debtless, but how do we take them out? So we take all the short-term debt, long-term debt, and also the cash and cash equivalents out of the transaction, because the transaction have to be cash. So for example, if I am paying, now I'm giving you a very simple example. I am selling my car to one of you. Let's say I am selling my car to Rinki Chawla, right? And my car has about 2 lakh of cash, and it's sitting on its back seat. So I go to Rinki and then say, okay, hey Rinki, would you want to buy my car? She says, she looks at the engine, she looks at different things. Say, okay, I pay you 300,000 bucks right away. I said, no, I would need 5 lakh. And then she asked, why the hell? Because this car I can buy 5 lakhs, a new one. Why would I pay you 5 lakhs? I would say, no, actually, what? What would you pay for that? She would say 3 lakhs again. I said, okay, but there is 2 lakhs sitting on my back seat. She said, okay, take that cash out then. Why would I pay for that? So simple example. So we need to take all those things out of it. Now, so for example, there is a litigation that I need to pay because of that car. Maybe I had a small accident or something where I need to pay because of that car. So Rinki would make me pay that in advance as well. She would just check all my papers and she says, okay, you must pay the last year's insurance, which is about 10,000 or maybe let's say 20,000. Why are you not paying it before selling it to me? Or maybe I'll deduct it from your amount. So all those small things, small examples, but they are really important. So the net liquidity for any company is really important. We really go into detail. We analyze all the trial balances of the company, and we come up with those things, and we then take out all these debt-like items as well. Cash flow is pretty important as well, but yeah, we thought of having a different session for that, because that's again a large topic. But working capital, EBITDA, net debt, and then cash flows. These are the four main items that you should always look at. And if you are an MBA professional or if you are a CA, should definitely know core and details about these things. Go ahead, read on internet. Investopedia is one of the great sources. IMT CDL, the document that they share to read, to study. They are great material. There is lot there on the internet. And the alumni part of the of IMT is also great. We have alumni from all over the world. You can connect with them in case you see any problem in understanding, or if you want to see some live examples there. So that would be pretty helpful as well. Now, buy and sell, as we started off in the beginning of this thing. If you go ahead and buy a firm, you look at it differently, and if you go ahead and sell something, you would look at it differently. Buyer always wants to pay less, and seller would always want more and more money, and buyer would always come up with a number which would be less and less. but they have to be fair. So whenever we advise firms either on a buy side or a sell side, we advise facts based on the numbers, management numbers mostly, because we don't really do what the auditors have already done. So as a financial consultant or a financial consultant working in investment banking, or the advisory function of the big firms, what we do is we either buy or sell. We advise both of them, but the way how we look at things, or the way how we uh, determine the target working capital and etc. These things change a little, but otherwise the views are pretty fair, and we analyze them very nicely. Now, a small thing that is very interesting for you guys to know: what is a target? Think of a buy side deal. Do people know what is a target in a buy side deal? And whom would I advise? Would I advise the target, or whom would I advise as a consultant? Anybody who has an answer to that would be great. You can just unmute and speak. What is a target in a deal? Okay, let me help you with that. So I'm taking a
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
Rohit, please go ahead.
Sir, this is Sumit Chaudhary, and
Hi,
from
Sumit.
the seller point of view, our targets would be to achieve more or more gain in the form of cash. So to get more money of the resources which we are selling off, so our prime target should be that only. Yeah.
Okay, let me rephrase my question. I meant in a transaction perimeter, because we are talking about transaction happening in the deal world, right? What is a target in a
Okay.
deal world? For example, if a company is merged, or if A is acquiring B, what is the target between A and B? The
So can I
target is not
answer?
as in target. If A is acquiring B, which company would be the target?
B would be the target.
Correct. So that is the
Yeah.
correct answer.
Yeah,
So
sure.
now, that is Shivam, also that is correct. So now I'm giving you an example of a buy side deal. What do you think if let's say any firm, let's take any firm, let's say ABC Limited is up to sell, up for sale to all the bidders. What do you think? How many bidders could be there, and how many buy side teams can work on this transaction? Is there a number, or would there be just one buyer? You can write or unmute yourself and then speak.
The bidders can be of any number. I don't think there will be any
Correct.
limitations
Multiple
in the
bidders. Multiple bidders, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So for now, think of it from the financial consultant or the financial professional thinking. If there are multiple bidders, and for every bidder, the thing is a target, right? So they would have their consultants working on it. So buy side deals are really tough. They are really small in nature. Small, when I say small, time is pretty small, and you get very less time, and you have to make out the best of opinions in your report. So it's very challenging. And for every bidder, the target is only one. So they would look at target in different scenarios, different matters, and in the end, that would be bought by just one person. So very challenging, because you have to, not just bid with the number as it's shown in movies, but you would have, all the expert sessions, and in the background there is a lot of things happening. So yeah, it's and Daksh also mentioned multiple bidders. Thanks for that. So now the last part of our presentation, I'll just run through it quickly, because I would like to leave some space, like 2, 3, 5 minutes, and we can extend the meeting or the workshop by like 5 minutes. I don't think we would mind that. So economic impact of crisis. So as I understand, most of you would have done your masters in the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or your CAs in the last few years, or whatever education you are doing. So we all have heard about the 2008 economic crisis, right? And what happened then? And then there were also global recessions coming up in 1900s, and then there was also 2001. What happened, in all these things? So let's look at the most recent one, like the 2001. So I would encourage all of you to just look beyond 2007. If you see before 2007, the level of I would say the M&A activities, it was about 1,500. Sorry, does somebody has question here? All right. So if you look at the level of recovery after 2007, it took almost, until 2014, it took almost 7 years until the level was recovered. So Pooja just asked, what is the buyer's cost at which they want to buy. So actually, when a company, really wants to sell itself, the people don't just come up with a number. We call it a signing bid. They come up with a signing bid, a document. I guess this is the maximum that I can zoom for the chart. So they would come with a signing bid, and then this bid is signed. So that is basically a binding bid. Binding bid means when the company, the target, would share all the confidential material with the firm, it cannot just opt out and say, hey, I don't buy it. Of course, it depends, but they are restricted to share that further. They are restricted to share and manipulate their share market prices and everything. So, and the amount of money that comes in a later stage after all the expert session, and when the bidding process says, okay, now we just have one buyer, and then all of these EBITDA multiple and those things come up, and then we go ahead and share our report, discuss on different matter, and then the deal happens. So the final price or the enterprise value, we can do a webinar. I'll talk to MD on that. But yeah, the enterprise value is not reached in a day. It takes some time, and it's not that the bidder would come with a number right away. Most of the time, it's not like that. So now, if you see, it took all. Yeah, Sumit. Anyone? Okay, guys. Let's continue first, because otherwise we would miss a few things. So it took almost 7 years. So you can think of yourself, but we all did our graduations and masters during that time. We all knew what kind of talent we needed to surpass that hard times, and now we have COVID. So the economic recession happens, then but deals keep happening, but the same level of deals might take few years to recover. Whenever these things happen, the employment falls. On the right, you would see the global GDP economy. So it just crashed in 2008. It even became negative. And COVID is also. So the number that you see in the right-hand side chart, the red mark, I took it near April. That's when I made this. So now it would be a little more downwards. So these things, when these come, these crises, they happen to take a lot of jobs. They happen to, help. They also come up with a few solutions for us in terms, for example, right now, a lot of things are happening virtually. Even the schools have happening virtually. So a lot of potential for the technology firms, a lot of potential for the health and research firms. So yeah, these things are there, but yeah, these impact pretty badly. But if the markets collapse as well. If you see after 1990, after a lot of innovation in the field of banking, the market rates or the credit rates, I would say, have declined a lot. On the below chart, if you see cash, now cash has become a bigger deal player, right? In 2008, Apple cash reserve exceeded few biggest global economies in the world. This is surprising, but you should go ahead and read it. Just put on internet Apple cash reserve in 2018. It actually exceeded a lot of countries' cash reserves then. So, but now after 2008, the importance of cash, or the thing that I mentioned in very beginning of the dry powder, equity dry powder, the importance of that has increased relevantly after that time. And the companies really focus on maintaining their cash, maintaining their trade working capital, having less of spikes and unseasonal behavior. That means the trade working capital deficit is highly discouraged right now. The focus on days management or inventory management or receivables management has increased, and somehow is keeping the firms running in a lot of things. There are a lot of provisions that are made to the WHO and the IMF. They work towards it, and that's pretty helpful in a lot of scenarios. So economic impact, which came after this COVID happened. So if you see on the left, the 60 countries report COVID. So until Feb 28, 60 countries already reported decline in their values or decline in their prospects for 2020, that there would be a declining trend for sure. due to this COVID, because the economic, I would say, activity just stopped after that. So that hampered it pretty badly. One quite interesting thing is there in a chart. So this is something that you all know. Even the index in India has crashed a lot since that happened. So this is Dow Jones in US. So that also decreased quite a lot since Jan. If you look at it now in May, this is one thing that the companies came out. So Rabobank came out with this research, and then this says the companies which have a greater outlook with China, or they who do a lot of business with China, because until April the scope was just those countries, but then it just spread it out in all of them, in a lot of other countries as well. The Eurozone lockdown happened, and then the Indian lockdown happened. So there is a huge impact that has caused to the economy. There is a negative impact. But as all the great leaders in the world say, there is always a positive light after the end of tunnel. So we would not end this presentation on a negative note. Rather, we would look at the things that we as financial professionals can do to enhance in our careers, and to make a difference in the coming time. So after 2008, the values of MBAs increased tremendously. The value of investment bankers, the deal makers, the people who are really good at consulting. So those values really increased in the last couple of years. So I have just put a few things here. I don't know how many of you would know, but data analysis has got analytics has got great advantage in the last few years. The focus on Alteryx, Spotfire, all those base things are now based thing as simple as Excel. So earlier, if you look at the market 8 years before, people used to think, okay, if you know Excel, you are good, you can get a good job. But believe you me, now the things have changed. If you really want a good job, you have to be good in data analytics as well. So IMT CDL has also a course there, which actually, just to make sure, just to mention, IMT has not really asked me to promote anything, but this is something that I found on internet, great for anyone who would want to learn it. So this is something that I would really encourage you all to go ahead and just have a look there into the course, and it's great. It's supported by some big four, and then I guess there's some great career opportunity that you can think of doing, and you can pursue it online. So I guess it would definitely help you out. And there are a lot of other things. Maybe you can go on Alteryx website, learn what is it about. It's all free. You can go ahead. And also there is a big four company which came up with this digital fitness app. So you can go ahead in the Play Store, download it. There's something what they say, they are helping their communities, right? So they are helping their communities to grow. It's something that they are giving back to the society. Same as LinkedIn Learning, they are just giving back to the society. Anybody can go ahead and learn there. So a lot of opportunities there. Just be prepared for the future, I would say, and just keep gaining and keep learning. And I am hoping that you would enjoy that even more in the coming time. So I would just pay a sincere thanks to everyone. And before saying thanks, I would ask if there are any questions that you would like. Also, there is Saurabh. So Saurabh, maybe you can unmute yourself and we can have a quick conversation there if you want to. So I would be pretty happy to do that. So see, Saurabh is from PwC SDC and he's using this digital fitness app. So very interesting to know that. But as I mentioned, it's not just for PwC. Anybody can go ahead. PwC, of course, made it, but they have rolled it out for the society so that it can, benefit every one of us. So what, as the next step, I would really encourage if you could, leave a small feedback on the IMT. Maybe I would ask the colleagues to send you a feedback link and, come up with more suggestions, and we would, definitely make it a point that we can have a few more webinars coming in the coming time and make it a success. And reach out to IMT anytime that you want to. And in case anybody has something to say, they can unmute and then we can talk about it. And I guess we take 5 minutes more, which should not happen in a big person.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Sumit, I would encourage somebody
Hello,
else if Sumit, if somebody else wants to speak, I guess that would be good because we have talked with you quite a lot of times. If there is somebody else who would like to talk.
Okay.
Thank you, by the way. Anybody else who wants to talk or say something, don't hesitate, I would say.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. We can listen. Hello.
Can I have an epitome question? That after this economic fiasco, global economic fiasco, can we see more and more M&A scenario to strengthen?
Thanks for your question. I got your question, but maybe your internet
their power
is bad.
of different companies. Hello.
Yeah.
Can we see more and more M&A in this new fiasco?
Yeah, I got your question. You asked how would the M&A thing would go in the coming years. So as just a senior consultant working in a firm, that would not be the right answer. But I would try and help you out based on the facts that we have from the past. So M&A activities keep happening. So economy would recover. It's not so the firms have already started to prepare for the coming time, and then in 6 months from now you can imagine that the things would kick off. But as I mentioned, keep yourself informed about a lot of scenarios, keep yourself updated, prepare for the future, and I guess that would be good. And thank you everybody who just wrote, and then
Hello.
I really like connecting with you. And
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Who's that?
Yeah, sir, actually, I'm an MBA student. I'm an MBA student, and I'm pursuing it from Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University. And right now in second semester, about to take finance as my major subject. So I'm thinking of the data science.
Ayush, I guess in the respect of time, I would encourage you, and I would encourage everyone to just drop us an email, and you can connect with Purushottam or Rakesh. Or you can just send an email to IMD, and I'll just ask them to roll out an email so that you can send your questions. You would come on that, and you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easily available. You just put Naveen Singh, PwC Germany. I'll be there. And just want to thank you all. Yeah, just want to thank you all because it has been great and for your time. And we'll talk again soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such a nice information. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Looking forward to attend more. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your enriching deliberation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.